Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Last episode, we took a look at BMG's Millennium Masters series of CD releases and talked about how each of those was themed around a particular musical genre of Elvis's songs, or as close to they could get as possible. And after I'd wrapped up the recording, I started thinking about how that wasn't the first time that had been done. When they came out in 99 onwards, just 2 years before, another series of CDs had attempted exactly the same thing, or by and large the same thing, and also a slightly more ambitious approach, because there was probably over the range of the series around about double the tracks that you got on the Millennium Masters. But I did think, I wonder if this is what gave BMG the idea for Millennium Masters. So I'm talking about the series of CDs that commenced in October 1997 in the US from the Time Life Company, who licensed from BMG the right to use the tracks and put together a series of CDs, 15 in total, each one, apart from the final one, which was a Christmas CD, each one having 2 discs with 31 tracks on each. So in total, across their whole series, you ended up with 455 tracks, which is considerably more than you got with Millennium Masters. These CDs were initially only released in the US. They start in 97. They're not made available officially in Europe until 2001, and we don't see them here in the UK until 2003. But they start in the US in 97. These were mail order only CDs. You couldn't buy them in the shops. The way that they were released piecemeal in the US to start with, so it was done on a subscription basis. You signed up and you got, each time you got a new CD when they came out. I'm not entirely sure what price they commanded when they first were released in the US, what you had to pay for your subscription, but going on roughly what I think they were when they made it to the UK, I'm suspecting they were probably around the $30 mark, $29.99. If anyone knows exactly what they sold for in the US under the subscription model, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, initially released in the US, and the selling point for Elvis fans was that each particular release came with a bonus unreleased track. Each one would carry one bonus unreleased track. As it turned out, for the majority of the US releases, that was correct. By the time they made it out, certainly to the UK, with the sleeves unaltered, in the main, it was largely incorrect, because by then, the tracks had already been released on other titles. But at the time in the US, it was largely true. And I've got most of my information on the sort of veracity of those claims of unreleased tracks from the excellent Elvis UK by Gordon Minto and John Townsend. This comes from their UK Compact series. If you go back in my videos a little way, and I'll put a link in the comments, you can have a look at what those books entail. But you know, if ever there was a prime example of the level of detail and information they give you, is what I'm about to sort of bring into this particular video. So let's start at the very first release, shall we? So this was in the US, it was in October 97, and this is Elvis. The Elvis Presley Collection was the banner, and the Time Life logo was actually on the back. They were BMG product, but as I say, they were licensed by Time Life. So you have got the combination of RCA, BMG and Time Life on the back. So the first one, I guess you could say they were rather playing it safe with Elvis love songs. In terms of the unreleased bonus tracks, so let me see if I can get that without too much glare. There's your track listing across both discs, 31 tracks, the 31st being unreleased bonus cut, If I Loved You. Now this is the home recording from 1966, and at the time when this was released in the US in 97, that was officially unreleased. The problem is, as I said, when these sleeves made it out into other territories, particularly the UK, so by the time this comes to the UK in January 2003, that claim isn't true. It's not unreleased because it had been released on the home recording CD. So the gap between 97 and when it's released 2001 in Europe and Japan and I believe Australia, by the time it makes it out into the UK in 2003, that's the reason these claims become untrue, because you've got a CD coming out telling you it's unreleased, and it isn't because it's already been on another release. But at the time in the US, this particular home recording of If I Loved You from 66 in Bel Air was unreleased. So with each of these releases, you tend to get the actual photograph that's on the cover replicated on the discs themselves. And you do get quite nice little booklets with each one, it has to be said. There was some care and attention went into the booklet. You got photographs, you got an essay detailing the material. They're not just flimsy no booklets at all. They've put some care and attention into them, and you get a particular highlight of what was the selling point, really, the unreleased bonus track. And then you get your track listing, and we're only on the middle of the booklet, so these are pretty decent releases. And then we get it translated into German, so you get the essay again translated into German. So they obviously made the booklet so that it could be used across different territories, and this was the one that made its way into the UK as well, I think. So that's your first CD from the US, October 97, and that's Love Songs, CD 1. Nice little release. I'm not going to comment on sound quality and what have you. They're perfectly listenable, and they certainly were perfectly listenable at the time. So, I don't think there's anything to particularly highlight there. CD 2 in the US in November 1997, was Elvis Rockin'. Again, quite predictable. The first one, Love Songs, second one, Rockin', but you can see where they're coming from. So, there's your track listing on CD 2. And the unreleased bonus cut is Baby What You Want Me to Do. Now this is one of the dressing room rehearsals from the 1968 TV special. And at the time that this CD made it out into the US, that wasn't unreleased. It is correct. Same story again, though. By the time it makes it out into the UK, it's already been on the double CD Memories 68 Comeback Special. So by the time it comes out in the UK, it wasn't an unreleased bonus cut. But in the States, in November 97, it was officially unreleased. So as you see, we get the picture from the front on the discs. And so they're really nicely put together, I think. Again, so I think they're all by the same writer. Is it Charles K. Wolfe? I think he covers the writing duties in all of the liner notes to the sleeves. You definitely get in, there's information on what was the unreleased cut in the US at the time. I think where you get in with these, there's more to them. The Millennium Masters was a nice little summary, but these are quite meaty, aren't they? You get 31 cuts per per actual release. And there's your German translation. So yeah, nice little booklet, nice little release. CD2 is Rock and Roll. What did I say? What did I say it was rocking? I might have got confused with Millennium Masters, but no, that one's Rock and Roll. So we start with love songs, then we've got Rock and Roll. CD3, March 98 in the US, this one was released. And I believe, if I'm right, just check my notes. Yeah, 3, 4 and 5, for some odd reason, were released out of sequence when they were released in the US. Not quite sure what was behind that. So this one is From the Heart, March 98 in the US. And there is your track listing. And our unreleased bonus cut on this one is Separate Ways, Rehearsal Take 1 from the 27th of March 72. So this is the mock session that was done for Elvis on tour. Now, at the time this came out, in both the US and the UK, that was an unreleased tape. So the claim is genuine in this one, even at the time that this was released in other territories. So there we go. There's your track listing. And I think we reverse the image for some reason on the discs. Maybe they didn't want him looking inwards on the disc. I'm not sure. Sometimes the trays open a different way as well. So From the Heart, which again tends to be, you know, songs of love and that kind of thing. So the theme is not dissimilar to the first release, but then again, you know, Elvis did record a lot of songs that could fall into the kind of love song genre, couldn't they? So they had a lot to choose from. But yeah, they're really nicely put together, you know, things like the, you know, the Vegas menu shown there. There's your bit on your unreleased cut, the sort of memorabilia, the bubblegum cards and stuff. I think, you know, I think they're really nicely done. Especially with the amount of tracks that you get across the series. I think it probably worked out quite expensive once you'd bought them all. But we'll see when we talk about the way they were released in the UK, you could get some deals on them. So there is From the Heart. That is our CD3. CD4. This is Country, and this was released in February 98 in the US. So as I said, they were out of sequence number wise, which is a little strange. So there's Country, and our unreleased bonus cut on this one is Snowbird. And Snowbird is take 2. In the US, when this was released in February 98, take 2 of Snowbird was unreleased officially. So that's correct. By the time it was released in the UK in 2003, it wasn't unreleased because it had been out on the Today, Tomorrow and Forever box set. So again, you know, that delay causes them a bit of a problem in the actual accuracy of what they're saying. So there's our disc. I like the fact that each disc is a nice sort of different colour as well. I think that gives it a nice feel. And our booklet of this one, usual essay. Really nice. I do like these. It's a great little set. And I have a special fondness for this, but I'll get to that at the end. So there's our information on Snowbird Take 2. Track list. German translation. I'm not quite sure why it took so long to make it out in the UK, bearing in mind it was released in Europe in 2001, and then we had to wait another 2 years. So I'm not sure what caused that. So the next one on the list is movie Magic. Now this made it out in December 97. So in the US, this was released before the preceding two that we've looked at, even though numerically, and they are given numbers on the spine, this was actual number 5, but it was the third to be released in the US. Not quite sure what's going on there. But. So their track list, and we get Little Egypt Take 21. Now Little Egypt Take 21 in December 97 was officially unreleased in the US. By the time it comes out in the UK, it's been on the FTD title out in Hollywood. So again, it wasn't unreleased. That time lag really did mess up some of those claims, didn't it? So there's our disc. Which one? This one goes that way. And our booklet. Lovely stuff, really nice. These are relatively easy to pick up these days. There are a couple that are harder than the others for some reason. I'm not sure why that is, but they turn up on auction sites, eBay and what have you, fairly regularly. You're usually looking somewhere over the £8 mark. People tend to ask for them, which I don't think, you know, if you get them at a decent price, I don't think it's bad at all. Right, number 6, The Rocker. April 98 in the US. And our bonus cut on this is rehearsal take 2 of Burning Love. Oh, I don't know why this one seems more glary than the others. Or maybe it doesn't. Burning Love, that claim for take 2 was correct in both the US when it was released and also in the UK it was released. So yeah, we've got no issue with that one. Again, has that been reversed? I think they've reversed it on the... They obviously like him looking outwards on the discs themselves, is the only explanation I can find for that. Where's our booklet? I'm trying to think of a sort of comparable swathe of releases that came out. You know, I mean, you could go with that Franklin Mint Complete Masters that was released mail order only, sort of piecemeal, but there were 30 CDs there, and it sort of had the box and everything with it. So that's not, you know, these ones are standalone CDs. There's no box to house them in. So, you know, I think probably the Millennium Masters that we looked at last time is the closest you can get to this, putting them out bit by bit. But obviously they're different in that they're BMG and they were widely available in stores, whereas these were mail order only. So these are reasonably unique, really, for such a big series covering so many tracks. So what do we get after The Rocker? We get The Romantic. So we've basically had a lot of rock and roll and a lot of romance, haven't we, which is not such a bad thing. So there's The Romantic, and our unreleased cut on this one is take 2 of For the Good Times. Now, that one's quite interesting. So in the US, when this came out, and this came out in June 98 in the US, actually, For the Good Times, take 2 had already been out on the Platinum A Life in Music box set. But on a Platinum Life in Music, it had been incorrectly noted as take 3 when it was actually take 2. So although the same take had already been out, that probably explains the confusion they had, because they thought this was never been out before, and you know, by the time this act was actually released, it already had, but it had been incorrectly labelled as take 3 on Platinum: A Life in Music. So, oh, he's upside down. Look, is he the right way around? No, he's upside down, both of them. Nice sort of pale pink on that one, and shot there, and your booklet. I think these are great, I really do. There's some of the pocket RTA pocket calendars. Just start feeling to me like the booklets are getting a bit thinner. And as we've seen a little while, the idea that each CD was going to have a genre theme, it feels as if they got so far and thought, oh, that's a bit of a bind having to do that. Let's do something else, and you'll see what I mean. So there is The Romantic. So the next CD, which is number 8, I believe, is Rhythm and Blues. Now this was out in July 98 in the US, and our unreleased take is Wearing That Loved On Look, take 14, and this time it's correct. In both the UK and the US, when this was released, that was officially unreleased, so it was a bona fide unreleased take. So, you know, they're not all incorrect, even allowing for that gap in timeline. So that was right on this one. CDs. And booklets. That's a great photo. So, Rhythm and Blues. Bit about the unreleased track listing, and German translation. Actually, this book feels a bit thicker than the last one. I think on some of them we get a couple of pages less by the feel of it, and how long it's taken me to go through it. So there's CD 8, and that is A Rhythm and Blues. CD 9, Gospel. We had to get to Gospel eventually, didn't we, if we're doing themes of Elvis tracks. So CD 9, Gospel. Now that one was September 98 in the US, and we get a bonus cut of We Call on Him, take 2. And with this one as well, that claim was true in both the US in 98 and the UK in 2003. Take 2 of We Call on Him hadn't been released officially. So discs. I actually think that the front photograph is reversed because Elvis's parting's on the wrong side. So I'm not sure why they've done that. Which way does this one open? There we go. This is True Love's Mum and Dad. Nice high quality booklet, as with them all. Bit about the bonus cut. German translation. Great stuff. Really good. Really good. So there's number 9. Now, number 10, we get the theme deviating somewhat. So they've given us 9 CDs themed around musical genres, but then they give it up as a bad job and they just kind of lump them together in years, which I might have been inclined to do myself. You know, we saw how many there were of the Millennium Masters. What, there were 12 CDs and they were only single discs. By this stage they've already done 18 discs themed around musical genres, and I think they've gone stick some date ranges together and call them treasures. And they are treasures, you know, they're great listens, but it does make me laugh that they start off with all the best intentions and then it's kind of no, just stick some date ranges on and let's put some of that. So which I suppose again Millennium Masters did, didn't they, with 50s, 60s and 70s. They kind of copped out towards the end as well. You know, I wonder, like, these meetings where these people get together, we can theme it all, put it all together, and then, you know, as it goes on, why did we start doing this? It's really hard. So there we go, we get Treasures 1953 to 1958. So basically Elvis in the 50s until he goes into the army. So there's your track listing. This one came out in October 98 in the US, and the unreleased track is actually takes 1, 2 and 3 of I Was the One. And guess what, we've got 3 in a row. Both in the UK and the US, when these came out, they were unreleased officially. So it's a genuine claim at the time on that. Now, obviously, it's worth saying that, you know, even if they were unreleased officially in the UK when these came out in 2003, they've certainly been released on other things since then. So, you know, no one's going to buy these used now thinking that they're getting something that they're not going to get anywhere else, because all these have appeared on other releases. But, you know, that's their selling point at the time. And as we've seen in the US, apart from that one that was on Platinum A Life in Music and had been incorrectly labelled on that anyway to cause some confusion, I guess, to Time Life, who were putting this together, obviously with BMG. By and large, when these came out in the US, they were correct claims about officially unreleased. But there's your track listing on Treasures 53 to 58. Fine pair of CDs. Feels like a thicker booklet. You can usually tell how thick they are by how much it takes to wedge them back into the case. Fine little compilation. I just think this is a great set. I really do. There's your information about I Was the One, track lists, so on and so forth. There we go. So, number 10, the first of the Treasures, and we get 4 Treasures releases. Number 11, Treasures 60 to 63. Logical lumping together, I'd say. You know, your first one is your 50s, then you get Elvis when he was still recording studio material that wasn't movie soundtracks. Then we get sort of largely, I think, soundtracks, and then 70 to 76. So yeah, quite a logical sort of breaking up, I'd say. So what do we get on this one? This is Knight Rider. So this one was out in the US in December 98, and Knight Rider is take 5. So when this came out in the US, it was unreleased. When it came out in the UK, it wasn't, because it had already been on Such a Night, Essential Elvis 6. So that claim wasn't true by the time it made it out into the UK. I just love the layout on these and the colour schemes, with everyone different. They're really nice. Our booklet. Got a bendy Elvis there. Late 50s, early 60s German rubber Elvis bendy doll. Now you'll know that's the kind of thing if I actually saw come up, I probably would put on the shelf here somewhere. There we go. Great stuff. So, Treasures 60 to 63. Then, the next in the series, predictably enough, Treasures 64 to 69. So this is really our movie material, but then it does go into some of the American sound recordings from 69. So it's not really a movie themed, but it obviously encompasses a lot of that period because of the timeline. So we get Singing Tree. So this one came out in January 99. No, it didn't. Yes, it did. January 99, and Singing Tree is take 13. Singing Tree take 13, unreleased in the US when this came out. By the time it gets to UK release, it's been out on the FTD release, Long Lonely Highway. So again, for the UK, by the time it comes out, information's incorrect. It isn't unreleased. There we go. And our booklet. I think this is one of the ones that's reasonably difficult to get hold of, slightly more than some of the others. But if you keep your eye out, you can still pick it up. And I'd definitely say it's a set worth adding to the collection, because you're getting so much material, and you know they are quite nicely put together. The actual running order's quite nice. The booklet's quite nice. So you know they're a decent product. So, Treasures 64 to 69. Now this is the one. This is the one for some reason. And I don't know if it was because it was released towards the end of the series. But this is the one that seems to be hard to get hold of. I looked on eBay before I started recording, and some people are asking silly money. This is on there today for £56, which is just crazy. But yeah, I don't know why, but this one, Treasures 70 to 76, is the one that seems hardest to get hold of. Now this came out in the US in March 99, and we've got Seeing is Believing take 4. Again, yes, for when it came out in the US it was unreleased. By the time it came out in the UK, it had been on the FTD release Easter special. So when it made it out in the UK, it wasn't unreleased. So there's Treasures 70 to 76. Booklet. Do you know, as I've been sitting there recording this, I've noticed that I perhaps should take an eye into my t-shirts more often, because this is horrifically creased, isn't it? Must try harder. I probably won't. I don't iron anything. Okay, so 70 to 76. Oops, trays come out there. That one's all fallen to bits. That's the only problem is these sort of flap. If they can quite often pop out and then not go back in. So there is the 13th CD in the set. Now, as far as the UK was concerned, the last one we see here, the last double CD, was actually the last one we got. Because the final CD, the Christmas CD, wasn't released in the UK. Not sure why, but it wasn't. So this was really the last of the series for the UK. And this is fun at the movies, and I think this one is slightly harder to get hold of as well. Now, when did this one make it out? April 99 in the US. Did I say April 99 for the last one? That was March 99. April 99 in the US, and our unreleased track is King of the Cold Wide World, takes 7 and 8. And actually, King of the Whole Wide World, I can't get my words out. King of the Whole Wide World track takes, King of the Whole Wide World takes 7 and 8. Got there in the end. Were unreleased at the time in the US, and by the time these made it out into the UK as well. So that was a genuine claim on this one. And your discs. This opens a different way, just to make it awkward. Unless some of these cases have been replaced, that's entirely possible. Fun at the movies. It's funny really, because the whole set comes out themed around genres. And I guess, you know, it's a stretch to call a musical genre movie tracks, but, you know, that's what they've gone with. But it seems strange that they did that, and then they put 4 that were just themed around years, and then this one's sort of the final really release of the 2 CDs, and they sort of went back to kind of how they'd started. You know, I think it was really nicely conceived. It was pretty damn nicely executed, I've got to say. But some of the decision making feels a little bit woolly along the way, doesn't it? They sort of drift in and out of what they were actually intended. So there's your final one in the UK, but your final one in the US was the Christmas release, a single disc. And this one was quite interesting, for some reason it's labelled number 15, but it I think, if I remember rightly, it was called 16 in the US or something. There was something strange about the number, and I can't quite, it's kind of gone out of my head now, but so we get on this Blue Christmas Live, and this is from the June 27th 6 p.m. sit down performance for the 68 special. And even when this came out, that wasn't, I think it's probably because it took it forever to come out. This didn't make it out into the US until August 2000, and the release before that was April 99. So there was some delay in getting this one out, and, you know, it didn't make it out into the UK at all. But that delay, you know, again, these sleeves were probably all designed and ready to go at the time, but by the time it comes out in the US, that take of Blue Christmas Live had already been out on the Memories 2 CD, Memories 68 Comeback Special release. So it wasn't true, it wasn't an unreleased cut. But yeah, single disc on this one. Season's greetings, Elvis and the Colonel underneath. And booklet. Great stuff, absolutely great. Really, really like this series. So there you go, 15 CDs, 455 tracks in total. Not quite what they were claimed to be in terms of unreleased material, although by and large, as I said, they were in the US. It was just the time delays, really, the sort of scheduling, that meant that claim became somewhat inaccurate in a lot of the cases. But let's just have a look at some prices. So when these were released in the UK, and they had quite heavily magazine advertising and what have you, they come out piecemeal in the US, so a release at a time, and you got them on the subscription. Now, you could do that in the UK, but you could also buy them outright. Now, if you bought all 14 because you didn't get the Christmas release, that would cost you £158 and £7.95 postage and packing. So, you know, not a fair outlay, really. You could also break that down into 4 instalments of £39.95. Now, at the time, I got these on instalments, so I got one a month or one a fortnight. I can't quite remember what the frequency was. And if I remember rightly, I believe I was paying something like £16.99 for each double CD, plus there would have probably been a couple of pounds postage on that. So, you know, it's a great little set, but it quite pricey, really, I suppose, when you look at it. Now, the reason I say that I'm really fond of these releases, particularly fond of them, is because this little stack here, about two and a half years ago, there or thereabouts, so it was before I started the channel, my wife and I visited a little town that's around 10 miles away from where we live, and we popped into a charity shop. And I saw these on the rack of CDs staring at me. I could see straight away from a distance what they were on the spines. And I paid 50p each. So this little set here cost me the grand total of £7.50. I think that's one of the best bargains, certainly one of the best Elvis bargains I've probably ever had. But one of the best bargains, £7.50. Now, even allowing for the fact that you may be able to pick some of these up for the £8-10 region now, you're going to have probably postage and package on top of that. There are a couple of titles you're going to pay more for, you know. £7.50. I still can't believe it now. You know, I've actually snapped the hand off as I was struggling to the counter going, yes please, I'll take these. But it's funny, isn't it, how sometimes you just hit something like a charity, or if you want to call it a thrift shop or something like that, at just the right time when they've just had a donation. Same with like shops selling second-hand vinyl. Just when they've bought someone's collection in, and boom, you just walk through that door right that second to go, yes please, I'll take these. So you know, it is really nice when you get lucky, isn't it? But yeah, I think that's a nice little collection. I think it's quite unique. It sort of stands alone as a, you know, a nice little summary of, yeah, we've got well over half of Elvis's recorded output on those 15 discs. They're nicely put together. There's some care and attention gone into the booklets and the overall presentation. Some of the theming's a little bit sloppy and a bit repetitive, but, you know, like I say, I think they probably backed themselves into a corner a bit and then had to find a way around it to carry on releasing the set. Perhaps might have been an idea if they thought of all that at the beginning, or maybe they did, and maybe even then they thought, you know, we can't do it. We can't put out 14 double discs and single and have them all themed around musical genres. You know, it's going to stretch a point too much. So, but no, applaud their efforts. Really great stuff. You know, really unique and especially at the time to be getting one of those through the post, one a month or whatever the frequency was when they were here in the UK, and seeing what you got and what it got to offer and looking through the booklet. Absolutely fantastic. Let me know in the comments, did you get these at the time? If you did get them at the time, whereabouts in the world are you and when did you get them? Did you get them piecemeal on subscription, or did you wait down the line and get them all together, or have you picked them up since, or is it something you want to pick up since? Let me know. As ever, love to hear your comments. I think that's it for a little while. I look at these sort of releases of sets because I've kind of run out. There are a couple I can think of, but they came out later and there's not so many of them, but I may lump them together into one episode further down the line. But I hope it's been interesting and enjoyable in some way. Thanks as ever for watching. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos and to leave me comments that I love to read. So I hope you can join me next week. But until then, have a great week, everyone. Take care. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.